day. Tony Mowbray, the Sunderland manager, 13 minutes added on to the end of the second half in that game. Which actually, I mean, Sunderland were losing, so he might have wanted more, but he was complaining about it. Sutton United's Amari Patrick, they won 5-1. He scored 2 goals. He was the one saying it's the equivalent of 10 more matches per season. The Crew manager, Lee Bell, as well, I thought very, very interesting. A couple of other points I want to make here. Varane made a good point. Raphael Varane was talking about this. He said, for some time, players have fed back there are too many games, the schedule's overcrowded, and it's dangerous for players. Players have been saying that to the authorities, and yet now they've decided to make games longer, and they want players to be less emotional, to care less about the whole thing, i.e. not get passionate, you know, not get show any dissent or whatever. I just find that absolutely extraordinary. Varane said, you're asking players to give more physically and mentally and to care less about the game. I mean, I think only referees could dream this garbage up and get themselves so involved to the point where it's detrimental to the players, and it actually doesn't really reflect, in my opinion, what the fans want, because the fans don't mind time wasting if it's their team doing it. They do mind time wasting if it's an opponent doing it. That's the simple fact of it. It's all tribal. Lee Bell, you heard at the end there, Crew manager. End of the first half of their game, 8 minutes added on. End of the second half, 9 minutes added on. Extraordinary. He says, I understand why they're doing it, but I hope they see some sense. Footballers are already running record distances now, and we're asking them to continue for even longer. I was at Sheffield Wednesday Friday night, 6 minutes end of the first half, 9 minutes second half. Watford, I was there on Saturday, 8 minutes first half, 9 minutes second half. For me, Darren Lewis, this is out of hand already. I mean, I understand. The sentiment is right from Howard Webb. But in practice, it's ludicrous, and it shows, yet again, law changes that don't really understand how footballers work.
Yeah. I listen, when I hear the passion in your voice, I can see exactly why the frustration is there. I think the interesting thing for me is that you mentioned the fans, and I listen, ever since I've heard you, you've always been a fierce advocate for fans. Mm-hmm. And where there is a slight... I want to throw this in there. If you think about the Premier League, a lot of fans pay some of the highest ticket prices in Europe, and yet the ball in play time is an average of 55 minutes in the Premier League. So fans are not getting value for money. If you look at League One, it's 48 minutes. If you look at League Two, it's 50 minutes. So fans are not getting value for money. Listen, my solution...
Do you think that's true, though? Do you think fans are coming away from games saying, ball wasn't in play a lot there, I didn't get value for money?
And I was about to say... I was literally about to say that.
There's nothing wrong with football.
I was literally about to say that. I was literally about to say my solution would be, like you have in basketball, a stop clock. If people are wasting time, stop the clock. If you are worried about substitutes, stop the clock.
What's the punchline here?
There is no punchline.
Come on, you can't be serious.
Well, listen, what I want is to be able to watch a game, because you've played in a million games, some of which were great, some of which were garbage. Let's not kid ourselves. Everyone listening at the moment, some of us have sat through some games which have... Two teams have cancelled each other out or not shown a commitment to want to play, or a team might not be as good as the other one, so they slow the game down, they make it difficult, it becomes a war of attrition, and it's not pleasant to watch. And sometimes, you know...
So you have to watch it for an extra 10 minutes.
Listen, my point is that for me, I see what the referees are trying to do, and I'm not going to sit here and defend everything, because I think a lot of what you said is absolutely right. But I do think we have a problem, first of all, with time wasting in the game, deliberate time wasting at all levels in the game.
Yeah, but that problem is enhanced by poor management of the problem by the referees. So I've played in many games where a team is deliberately trying to time waste, and the good refs give you a wink and say, I know what they're doing, I've got it. Don't worry. And I've played in games where it's 7-8 minutes because they've really gone over the top on the time wasting. And I'm all for stopping people standing in front of the ball to take a quick free kick. Bam, yellow. Kick the ball away, yellow. No problem. Petulant, stupid. You'll soon learn. They won't do it anymore. Yesterday he went bam, bam, couple of kick. Yeah, I think it was Alvarez and someone else. Kicked the ball away and went bam.
Yeah.
Pettiness, silliness. Get rid of it. No problem. Bosh. If you're talking about goal celebrations, for God's sake, you're gonna add on to... There's always been goal celebrations, always been elaborate ones. if not more elaborate, back in the day when you could jump in the crowd and you could do what you want and nobody cared. You know, when people go mental. We used to have managers on the pitch sliding on the knees and God knows, you know, remember Fergie and Kidd when Sheffield scored against Sheffield Wednesday? How long did that take? Goal celebrations is not something you should be going... Because I'm telling you now, when you score a goal in football, you don't think, I'm going to over-celebrate to waste some time. You don't. You think, oh, my God, this is one of the best feelings in the world. I can't even describe it. It's
but, Dan,
good.
I'm not going to die on that particular hill over the goal celebration because I think you make, again, a
but
fair
subs,
point.
we've always had subs.
Yes.
What you can do is you could say... Right, we know we have subs, and they've always added the time on, so they've said. So it's 30 seconds per sub. If some sub's messing around with his boots and his shin pads and takes a minute, add 30 seconds on. This ain't rocket science.
But I don't think that's what it was brought in for. I think it was brought in for the deliberate time wasting during games in moments where one team, the momentum is with that team, the other team can't cope with it, so they slow the game down and they try...
But slow the game down in what way? Let me just go back to the original point.
Nick Pope taking 3 years to take a goal kick, for example.
It's a yellow card if he's taking too long.
There was one on...
Poor refereeing and poor management, poor decision, management of these things is the reason they've had to get to this point where we've made it some black and white law. If you're good at your job, the time will be added on anyway. Because good refs used to say to me, don't worry about it. Take as long as he wants. It's getting added on.
You're 100% correct, and I can't disagree. I'm totally at one with that. Friday night, Cameron Dawson, the Sheffield Wednesday keeper, at 1-1, the referee was threatening to book him. He wasn't taking particularly long. He went to collect the ball. He put the ball down. Is he meant to sprint? No, of course not.
No, you just go and get the ball.
Yeah, he wasn't wasting time. He wasn't kicking his boots against the post or anything.
But I said this to you. I texted you this morning. I said there's going to be a lot of performative sendings off in the first 2 months of the season because referees are going to try and make a point of enforcing this too rigidly.
These are important points that teams are playing for right now.
100%.
So they can't. This is what really gets me about this. That the referees have come up with these laws and they're well intended, but in practice, and it's a bit like the handball laws and all that sort of stuff that have been a nonsense over the last few years. Well intended, the sentiment is correct, but in practice, they literally haven't got a clue what they're doing because they do not communicate well enough with the players.
But you know where the contradiction is in all of this? Talking about, ball being in play for a certain amount of minutes because fans are being, being shortchanged. Well, the amount of suspensions you're going to get, yellow cards and red cards now, the fans are going to be shortchanged when they're taking the kids to the game and the best player who's got a shirt and the number on the back, they paid £100 for, is not playing, he's got another ban.
Yep. And the fans are going to be shortchanged because they can't afford to hang around for another... I mean, I said it was 13 minutes at Sunderland. Tony Mowbray, you heard there, making the point that actually, what about the time added on during the time added on? Could it take the 13 minutes? Because I think there were 3 substitutions.
Happened yesterday in the Community Shield.
Absolutely right. That's how Arsenal scored. So you're getting time added on to the time added on, which could take it well over 15 minutes. Are you going to miss your train? Are you going to have the kids got to go to school the next morning? How long are you going to be there?
Well, that's not a reason not to add on time. So I don't. That's going a bit far.
No. I think it is because if you're doing
not if a team is time wasting.
Hang on, if you're doing it every single game, one-offs now and then, fine. I agree with you. It's going to happen, and there's going to be delays in games. I get that totally.
Bad injury,
but every single game, 8 minutes at the end of the first half, 9 minutes at the end of the second half. It can't go on. It literally can't go on.
Who? Just enlighten me here. Who's in charge of it? Just solely the referee, or is there somebody in his ear upstairs?
I think it's just the referee, isn't it?
I don't think it is a referee. I think it's someone because it's fourth official.
Right.
So the fourth official is now become...
Doesn't the referee communicate it to the
fourth
referee
official? Communicates to the fourth official.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is incompetence. Really.
I agree with that.
We're seeing incompetence being... incompetence initially for not adding on in the first place. Now we've got to have these rules. Now we're seeing incompetence again, and they're not able to differentiate between what is really... obvious time wasting and things that are just part of the game.
Well, it's like, as you said before, it's the management of the time wasting.
Yeah, lack of logic, real lack of intelligence,
common sense.
They're
absolutely since VAR and listen, I appreciate VAR's here to stay. I get that. I'm still not a fan, but what's happened is when they've tried to tweak the laws to accommodate VAR, and this time they've done it for God knows what reason. Then they're taking common sense out of the game. taking common sense out of refereeing, and that's not good. This isn't good for players. They really need to listen to what Raphael Varane said. Mentally and physically, it will take a toll on players.
Well, I'll just answer that one on Varane, and I think he does make one or two good points in terms of the emotion and the celebrate and all that. But I would beg to differ on the amount of players that are actually whinging to their management and their hierarchy at the club about the amount of games they're playing. And I'll give you some credibility to or validity to that, in that most players are desperate to be playing because they've got these huge squads of international superstars now, and most of them knocking on the manager's door going, I want game time, want to play. Because not many players, even the big teams, playing every minute of every game. Let's get that right for a start. So those players who are whinging about the amount of minutes they have to play, I'd like to hear them. I'd like to see their names written on a piece of paper and go, are you having a laugh? Because they probably played less than 40 games last season in total with the minutes. Because the players get rotated more than ever now. And we have 48 subs a game.
What about the manager of your old club, Crew, Lee Bell? We just heard him there saying this is going to break players.
Nonsense.
You disagree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
He says he can't manage a game properly because he doesn't know how long it's going to go on.
Well, that's different about game management. If he's talking about going to break players physically, nonsense.
And the wonderful thing about this debate is that it's not binary, because all of us have made points we agree with and disagree with over this. I think it is a problem, but I don't think it is a problem. I think it is a problem in some areas. Other areas, as I was saying before, the substitutions and all of that kind of thing, they've always been a part of it.
They've made it a mountain.
Have made it a mountain.
There was a little hill there, and they've made it a mountain.
It could have been dealt with better.
Let me read a few texts. Lee, a Man City fan, says, we don't need a stop clock. We need clear rules that the refs manage properly to stop players getting away with time wasting. That's what Danny said, absolutely spot on. Don't book a keeper in the last 5 minutes for time wasting. Do it as soon as it happens, and it will stop the problem. At the Etihad, it starts minute 1, and it doesn't get addressed until the last 5 minutes. That's Lee. Thank you very much for that.
The Barnsley keeper got booked for time wasting at 7-0.
Amazing, isn't it?
You see?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Is that a joke?
Well, I'll check that out, but...
because if he's telling the truth, whoever's written that in, please send another message telling us if that's true.
I'll check that out. Another one here, Paul, a Man City fan. Adrian, I'm not having any of it. Our game is a joke. The emotion in the stands has gone, and today some idiots were talking about sin bins. Next season, away fans are going to think twice about going to games. Why? Because they might not get home 109 minutes or the last train home. Paul, a Man City fan. I mean, it is a huge day out, and especially lower down the pyramid. It's, shall I go to the game or shan't I? Well, if it's finished by 5, yeah, and we get home for tea or we're doing this. But if it's not going to finish till 5:15, that eats into the evening. I know it might sound trivial to a lot of people, but actually, if you're making it's a decision, shall I, shan't I? That means you're not going.
I agree, but Adrian, do you not think that there is some culpability with players and
yeah,
I mean, you were mentioning.
I think there is.
Absolutely, I agree with everything Danny said. Yeah, and that text just there. Book a keeper. If he's time wasting in the first 5 minutes, book him in the first 5 minutes. He literally won't do it again. Yeah.
I think the problem is there's a couple of grey areas with this which causes problems for the referees. And when you talk about, so us three could sit around and watch a game. Yeah. And one team is using the dark arts, as it were, where they're elongating the time they're down for a little knock. You could see wasn't a good, we're all sitting there going, there's nothing wrong with him, come on. And the officials have to make that judgment call live and take a risk that actually they could be diagnosing someone incorrectly. He's fooling us there. Let's. That bit is a bit difficult with the injury, feigning injury, and I hate players feigning injury. It's one of my pet hates, trying to stitch up other players by making the injury sound worse than it is, screaming out loud, and the refs having to stop it because he's heard you scream. Because they do, they go off your reaction. I've seen it. Well, you've seen it. I've seen it when I played. If a player reacts, if he goes and then jumps up, the ref's like less likely to get the yellow out. If you scream and roll around, he's thinking, "Oh, Mike, that sounds bad."
Well,
yellow.
COVID really highlighted that.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? So I think that's one area that is difficult for referees without jumping on them too much, in that somebody's going to have to make a decision on who he thinks is prolonging injuries and who he's, this is going on too long. Because everyone deserves the right to be checked, and that's one area that I can see problematic if we gave them the common sense. Because one week you're going to get someone saying, well, he gave him he didn't add that 2 minutes on when the lad hurt his ankle, and he did add it on when he got a knee in the back or whatever it may be. So that is one area which I think could cause problems if you gave them the autonomy of making their own decisions, whereas at the moment they're doing it by a specific letter of the law, aren't they? But it is too much. It's getting ridiculous.
I think I can confirm that the Barnsley keeper Liam Roberts at 7-0 was booked for time wasting.
But you see, that referee, and I'm going to try and be reasonable with what I say. He needs a phone call, doesn't he? Or a meeting.
Or an intervention.
Yeah. Or a bloody good hiding.
It's just mad. No, can't condone violence.
I'm joking.
I know you're joking.
You know the logic around that. Where in his head? And this is the problem, because he's thinking he's taken too long.
Yeah.
He's not thinking about the score.
No.
Yeah.
He's not actually thinking about who were they playing? They were playing
Barnsley.
Port Vale.
That was Port Vale Barnsley, yeah.
Port Vale players were probably thinking, keep hold of it. They were probably shouting to him, keep it.
We don't want it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely. That is a lack of common sense.